Hello and welcome to this week's Traveling Young. Today it's just me, Josh, and this fire over here that I started here in this cold weather that we've got in Denmark. Today I'm going to talk about the fact that we recently bought this electric vehicle. I mentioned this a few videos ago, this Ioniq 5. Now that I've got about 4,000 kilometers and we recently did a trip where we had to charge away from home, I thought it'd be interesting to share that experience driving this electrical car, having to charge in Denmark. So we're going to talk about a few main topics. One is basically just overall impressions of driving an electric car, regardless of anything. Charging here at home in Denmark, charging on the road in Denmark, and if you stick till the end, I'll even talk to you about how I felt driving over the Nightmare Bridge with the new car, because that was a little bit different than before. So yes, electric car here in Denmark on this week's Traveling Young. Okay, yes, my electric car. So I did a car video a while ago when we leased this Juke that we had before, and people said, you should get an electric car. And I said, I will when I have a house, and I feel more comfortable having a charger installed, and I'm there. So we got a charger installed, and we got an electric car. And so I think, overall impressions of this car, I have to say that, I mean, if you asked, I think about like all the movies where they have like things from the future and you watch these in like the 90s, like that's what the future is going to be. There'd always be some kind of car or something because we always have to be transported around no matter what. That's one consistent thing in human civilization. And if you said to me, Josh, like 15 years ago, make a movie or say what you think a future car would be like in the year 2023, I think it'd be a lot like this car. I mean, it feels like the future a bit. I mean, the style of the Hyundai Ioniq 5 is nice. Just the interior, how it feels, is just comfortable. And it just has this future vibe that, every other car I've owned just feels like a normal car. This feels just different. And I really like driving it. And now this is obviously my experience with this one car. We did rent a Kia in the Netherlands a couple years ago, which really got me interested in getting an electric car because that was also nice. I mean, there's just so much room here because it doesn't have all the same body and chassis that a normal car has because it doesn't have the transmission like a normal car. And that space is just used to be open and it's just super comfortable to sit in. I also want to point out that this is the first car in a while that's like got new features for me. I'd say that the Juke and the Opel Mocha X that we had before were basically just like utility vehicles and they didn't have a ton of features. This car, I know some of these features are available on more than just electric cars, but the whole like lane assist where it keeps the steering like a co-pilot driving and the dynamic cruise control where it will make sure you automatically slow down if you approach a car in front of you. It'll even adjust the speed if the speed limits are changing because it can use the cameras as well as the map to figure out what the speed limit's supposed to be. That just makes driving long distances super nice. I mean, it's just less fatigue because you're concentrating on the road, but not exactly the same. You're there to react, but the car helps a ton and it just feels safer. I mean, a lot of the new features make it seem so much safer as well. So I just really like driving it. Now I'm going to make sure on my list that I'm capturing everything and I don't forget anything at all. Oh yeah, so typically we charge once every 3 days here because we don't drive a ton. So I think in this world of Denmark, it's super, super good because most our trips here are not that far away. I got the long range version, but the 2-wheel drive, which means the range is even better than the 4-wheel. And so we can easily go every third day, maybe before we charge when we're just sticking around home. Another thing, if you don't know this, is you shouldn't charge these cars past 80%. It diminishes the battery life. The car works a lot harder. The battery works harder to charge from 80% beyond. So that's just charging it every third day up to 80%. I did charge it more when I took a trip, but now I'm back and you can set it in the car to say don't, exceed 80% when you charge it. And also it charges from 20 to 80 faster. It's a fast charging car. And so it's also much quicker that way. Although at home, it does it overnight. And that's the next topic, actually charging at home, referencing my list. So we do this at night. So basically, I bought a Zaptec charger station, which is actually a Norwegian company. I shopped around, talked to some people that had electric cars to find out what they recommended for a charger. I got it installed. It's just right outside the house, perfect in the driveway. And I use the Monta app. I'll put links to this stuff below if you're curious. I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't get anything or whatever, but if you're curious, this is the stuff I use. And the Monta app will let you do smart charging, which basically when you plug it in, it automatically knows it's plugged into my charger, and it knows to charge it in the evening, in the middle of the night when the electricity is the cheapest, which is ideal. And so you plug it in, and it basically may take 3 or 4 hours. It charges at 11 kilowatts an hour, and the car holds 70 something. But of course, I do 80%. I never have it go down to 0, so it's probably just charging like 30 to 40 kilowatts, maybe max each time. And I wake up and it's up to 80%, and I'll have to think about it. So it's nice how it handles this smart charging in the evening, maximizes the, charging during the cheapest time, so you're paying the least amount for electricity. And another thing that's super interesting is in Denmark, you can get a refund of close to 70, it's like 69 øre, which would be like cents onto a single krona. And that's per kilowatt charged. So through the Monta app, I've subscribed to a service that processes all this for me. So the Monta app keeps track of how much, kilowatts were used during the charging. It automatically, through this service sends it, and then I get a refund into my account for 30 krona for a charge or something like that. So, I have to pay 59 krona a month for that to happen. And so I end up netting like 50 or 60 krona a month, and eventually that adds up, and I could use that for when I'm charging on the go if I want. Now, if you had 2 electric vehicles on that same account and the same charger, you could actually be, doing quite a bit better than that, but I just have 1. So I think the math is interesting though, because basically, if I'm going to read this to make sure I have it right, if I charge in the middle of the night, it's around 1.6 Danish krona, let's say, per kilowatt to use electricity in the cheapest time. That's with taxes and everything. And so if I'm paying, getting that, around 0.69 Danish krona refund back, let's say I'm paying a Danish krona per kilowatt and I'm charging, and if I charge 45 kilowatts, it's 45 Danish krona to charge my car up to 80% from 15%. And that would cover me around 250 kilometers or so. Let's say 250 kilometers, depending on the weather and other factors. So it's not that expensive to actually charge at your house at all. So in our case, like I said, 3 months we've had the car, and we've only charged it away from the home on this recent trip. So that's an edge case. Most of the time it's here. We're charging at home pretty low cost. And that's pretty nice. Although I'm here in the stairwell, a different part of the house you haven't seen. I'm sorry I'm cutting in, but I realized when I was recording, I forgot to mention that starting December 1st, we're going to have a Travelin' Young Advent calendar of YouTube shorts where we go through our top 25 favorite things about living in Denmark. So make sure to stay tuned. So now I want to talk about charging on the go. Now, like I said, we don't, lately we've not been traveling a ton on the road. Maybe we'll do more next year, but this was our first trip in the 3 months we've had the car that we've taken it to Jylland, and we went to Aarhus this past weekend. So I had to navigate this idea of charging on the go. So I started with the car 100% charged. I charged it overnight up to 100, and I thought maybe I can make it all the way to Aarhus. But we were staying in an Airbnb, which didn't have a charger. So I needed to make sure I had enough battery to get to Aarhus and enough the next day to take it to a charger when we were going to Silkeborg, because we were going to go spend the afternoon in Silkeborg. And I thought, well, I can charge it there while we're in the city. And so I actually decided to stop along the way to be sure that I was, going to make it and have enough battery life. I'm still in that anxiety stage. I haven't tested the limits. Also, it's winter. It was like freezing. So we had heaters, all this stuff going that also, diminishes the battery faster than if you didn't have those things happening. And it was just cold. So the things that you need to think about, though, is I think there's two factors when you decide where to charge. One is the speed of the charge, because there's a varying amount of speeds. This car can charge at high speed, but that doesn't mean that every charger is going to speed at that. Like at home, it's 11 kilowatts an hour. If you got a 11 kilowatt an hour one and I wanted to charge at 45 kilowatts, well, that's going to take like 4 hours. So you want to get speed. And the second is price. And this is what I think is kind of interesting, but not great about chargers, is they vary in cost significantly. I mean, you could go one place, it could be like 3.5 krona per kilowatt. And then you go like, 5 minutes away and it's 12 krona per kilowatt. Imagine if you were filling up your car with gas. It would never vary that significantly from one gas station to another. And so this is really awkward because it's also not obvious often when you get to the charger what you're paying per kilowatt. So you have to look in the apps to see, and you have to plan around that cost. So there's a little bit extra effort. Now, again, this is an edge case. I'm not traveling and having to do this often, nor do I have a contract to let me charge anywhere for less. You can get monthly contracts for that. Since I do it so infrequently, I'm just paying as I go. And the costs were significant. So I researched ahead of time going there because I knew where I was going to go and what I needed. And so I found a charger in Newport, and it was great. There was like a Burger King there. So we plugged in. It was a fast charger. And that one cost around 3 krona per kilowatt. And we sat for 40 minutes, had dinner, came out, and the car was at 95%. So I was like half of the drive. Then I got back up to 95%, and then we drove on to Aarhus. So that going there was perfect. But then while we were around, it was a little different because we wanted to go to specific places. So we went to Silkeborg, to the museum, and I found a place to charge there. I had to research ahead of time, find where a charger is, what's the cheapest one. That one was around 4 krona per kilowatt, and it was pretty slow though. So that was at like, by that point, 30-some%. And then I could get it up to like 70-ish, I think. I can't remember the exact number, but we were walking around the museum. We walked around, we had lunch in Silkeborg. And in that amount of time, it took that long to get up to like 70-some%, which is all I needed to get back to our Airbnb and then get to Tivoli that we were going to go to that night, back to the Airbnb. So basically the rest of the day and the next morning. But I mean, it would have been nice if that was a fast charger, because then it would have gotten it all the way up to what I wanted, no problem. So that was one. The next day, then we went to Dingamlabu, and I charged it while we were there because I knew we were going to drive back that night, and I needed to keep track of making sure I had enough, juice to get back. In that case, I found a charger that was 4.25 krona per kilowatt. It was also pretty slow. It was there for about 3 hours, and it got us up to, I think it was like 65%. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to drive from Aarhus back home. And I obviously am going to have to stop somewhere. So then I was trying to figure out, how far can I get? I didn't want to chance it because I'm not, I was afraid I couldn't get all the way to Newborn again, which is where that one charger was that I used. And so I found a place in Federicia. I'm trying to say that as best as I can. And this is where you have to pay attention because there were 2 chargers. And one of them was 10 krona-ish, a little more than 10 krona per kilowatt. And the other one was 6. And I was okay to pay 6 because I was like, all right, well, it's where I needed to be. But it's a place I've never been before. And I drove up and I wasn't paying attention. And I saw the first chargers. I went to it. And it turns out, I didn't know this until I drove away, it was the 10 krona one. And so I paid a whole lot more money. Basically 3 times more to fill the car up there versus the place in Newborn. And I mean, I can't imagine if you're just driving and, you let the car tell you, hey, tell me where to charge, and you're not paying attention and you just need electricity, you can end up paying considerably more money, 2 to 3 times more for charging. And that part of the process isn't cool. So I now have seen I can set some parameters in the app to give me only search and find things in certain ranges. So I'm going to change it around for next time. But the point is, it's like work. It's like effort to plan this stuff. Now, this doesn't make me not want one of these cars because I know the infrastructure is going to increase. And again, that's a rare situation. Most of the time I'm home and it's all fine, but it's something to think about. The other thing is this place in Federicia was like designed so poorly. So like the chargers are in these big things that almost look like a gas station, thing. and they have the chargers in them, much like a gas station thing. And some of them are sticking out the side, and they had it set up so you drive up like it's like almost like a gas station experience. You drive up, you fill up, and you drive away. But the lanes are really tight, and they didn't like factor in the fact that the plugs were going to be sticking out into the lane. So one car was like in one lane over, so they could fit, and then I was where I was trying to get around them, and I realized that like half of the plugs were broken. Some of them had like the whole connector broken off, and I think it's because cars were probably hitting that just trying to get around other cars because it's such a poorly designed spot. I mean, this thing was just miserable. So people were driving up, half of them were broken and not working. Thankfully, I found one, and then folks were sitting and waiting, and it was a fast charger, so I didn't have to wait but like 40 minutes to get it up to what I needed to get home. But it was just, that was like the worst experience because, I thought something was working. I hadn't done it a lot, so I'm like, am I doing something wrong? And then I realized it was broken, and that just wasn't good. This is what I would say. If you have an Airbnb in Denmark, you should get one of these chargers that I have, because through the Monta app, I could make this charger available for everybody and charge them for it. So you can have an Airbnb, you can have a charger out there, you could charge 3 or 4 krona per kilowatt. You could make money from people, and then they could charge at the Airbnb overnight. I mean, it'd be great. You can make a little bit extra income, and people could charge, and you're all good to go. So anyway, let me make sure I covered everything on this list, because I think I got it all. I think I did a pretty good job. But I mean, I love having the car, and it's super great for everything around here. I mean, it's just no problems. It's been a comfortable car to drive in. My dad, when my parents were here, he was in it and he was impressed. It's a super nice car. You just have to plan on these long trips. And I don't know if I'd trust the car to tell me where to stop, because I may end up at like a 15 krona per kilowatt charging station. So I need to figure out how to make the car itself recognize filters and, search criteria that I set. So I've been searching ahead of time and putting that address in on my phone. Since it's only been like 3 or 4, it's not been a big deal. So we've been like at breakfast and I'm figuring out where to go next on my phone. But that is an extra step. It's not like just rolling up to a normal gas station and it's all good. Because you don't, on a road trip, want to stop at a slow charging one, because that could take many hours. You definitely want to find fast ones and have them reasonably priced, so it doesn't cost like 450 krona like the one was yesterday that I used. So the last part that I told you I was going to say, though, was about driving over the Nightmare Bridge. So because this car has this whole adaptive cruise control and steering thing, I set all that up, and going over the bridge was so much more pleasant because I wasn't like nervously having to adjust the car. It was keeping in the lane for me. I wasn't having to like speed up or slow down based on people. It was doing all that for me. It was even super windy the day that we drove over, but I was fine. It was actually super good. So I will say that this car and all of its features has improved my experience driving over the Nightmare Bridge, even on a super windy day. All right, if you have experiences around charging or the type of electric car you have, anything that you want to share, I would love to hear, because I'm new to this and I think it's super cool and interesting, and maybe we'll get a second car one day and that will also be electric, because we will soon have 3 drivers in this house when Maya gets her license. And it seems like we might need 2 cars in that situation. But let me know your thoughts on electric cars here in Denmark. Some of this might be relevant in other places too, but this is my experience because I live here. And there you go. Thank you so much. See you later. Bye.